do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, speed.
Johnny, in Beaumont, Texas, was there, when you were growing up, was there a big rock and roll scene there?
Well, it kind of depends. The rock and roll scene started, I guess, in 55. But by that time, I was already into music. My father was a musician. He played banjo and saxophone, and was into stuff like Artie Shaw and Benny Goodman. So I started playing clarinet at first, and didn't get into rock and roll until it came along. But and by 55 or so, it was pretty much rocking along like the rest of the country.
Were you playing blues then yourself, though, or did you start off playing rock, emulating some people?
Actually, I discovered both of those kinds of music just almost the same time. It might have been. It's really hard to tell which one came first. I remember getting the Little Richard record on specialty, Slippin' and Slidin' and Long Tall Sally, and those couple of things, and the early Fats Domino, and the early Carl Perkins Blue Suede Shoes, and I was gonna say early Elvis, like Good Rockin' Tonight was the first rock and roll stuff, and that was close to R&B. But then, just about the same time, I heard the Wolf, Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Bobby Bland and Junior Parker and those people that were doing the straight blues, and it really was almost the same time period. I think it was the rock and roll stuff that I'd heard just a little before, though, and then when I heard the Wolf and Muddy, I thought, yeah, this is really it. I mean, Little Richard and Fats Domino is just about it, but Muddy and the Wolf is really what's happening. And it just, as soon as I had heard that, then everything else seemed to kind of go back and relate, to me at least, to the real blues.
Were there many other blues players in Beaumont then, particularly the white ones?
Well, at first, I was too young to go out to the clubs, but yeah, there were always musicians coming through. At first, there were integrated clubs. There was the Club Raven that held 1,500 to a couple of thousand people. Cheney's Auditorium in Orange, and this disc jockey Clarence Monton Garlow was he was a disc jockey on Beaumont's first black station, KJET, and he was also a singer and guitar player at night. And Bonton helped me out a lot. He was the first musician that I actually met and could watch doing these things, and I'd go out and hear him in clubs. And he was always working around the area, and he was always turned on to the best records. And up to that point, I'd learned everything that I had heard off records. But by the time I was 15 or so, I started. I got my first fake ID card, and having white hair, nobody could tell exactly how old I was. And in those days, Beaumont was a pretty wide open place. You could pretty much do whatever you wanted. If you were old enough to sit up on a bar stool, you could get a drink. And it was a good area for music. There was no problem as far as musicians, as far as being segregated. I spent most of my time at the Raven and the black clubs around, and I got nothing but help from the people that were in the club and the musicians around. I jammed with B.B. King, with Garlow, and met just about everybody that came through there. It was, before 63, 64, when the civil rights thing started coming out, then it started getting a little hairier. There was a little mistrust between the races, but before that, there wasn't any. It was total brotherhood. And musicians always seemed to retain that. Color never seemed to be much difference, If you could play the music, that was the only thing that counted.
Tell me how you sat in with B.B. King. How did that come about?
Because I was real obnoxious and had a few too many drinks, I guess, and I bothered B.B. I said, man, please, let me, you know, I went out and just wanted to hear him play, and after every drink, I wanted to sit in a little bit more, you know, and after a couple of hours, well, BB was real nice, you know. At first, he'd say, "Well, have you got your union card?" And I whipped that out on him, you know. That scared him. Uh-oh. Kid's got a card. What am I going to do? So then he said, "Well, we got all the arrangements all worked out." I said, "Yeah, I know all of them. Got all the records at home." And then I started sending up. Well, I knew half the people in the club, and they were asking, you know, "Well, are you gonna sit in or what?" And I said, "I don't know. BB don't know who I am. Why don't you go up and ask him if it's okay?" So after a while, B, I guess, had so many other black people coming up and saying, "Let this kid sit in." He figured that at least, even if I wasn't good, that I had a lot of friends, and it wouldn't, at least it'd be a good joke or something. And after a song or so, you know, everybody was clapping and everything, and BB was just super about it. You know, I said, "Keep doing it, kid," and you know, we'll play with each other someday. You know, and throughout the years, I'd run into him every 3 or 4 years, and it really meant a lot to me just to have somebody on a level say keep doing it, because there wasn't anybody else that really knew what blues was from the people that I knew. You know, the white people in general just didn't know what blues were, and they didn't really want to.
Well, you had influences from BB and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf.
I
People
literally
like that.
bought every blues record that I could find. It wasn't having favorites at first. At first, it was just everything that I could get, because it was such a great. It was the greatest music I'd ever heard. And anytime I'd see a blues record, most of them were 45s. You know, in those days, I'm not quite old enough for the 78s. So I've got a few of those, but right when the 45 first started coming out, before albums, is when I started buying my records, and every 45 that I'd find that had blues on it, I'd buy it. And from that post-war stuff, I got to the early stuff that came out in the 20s and 30s, the acoustic blues that I had to kind of be conditioned to. At first, the stuff by Charlie Patton and Son House and Robert Johnson and Willie Brown, Blind Lemon Jefferson. At first, that was a little too country for me. It was acoustic blues, and it was the Delta stuff, but it just didn't have that electric balls that I wanted. So it took me. I had to get to that through the Chicago stuff first, and now I love really both styles. The Mississippi Delta style is pretty much, I mean, the Chicago style is pretty much just electrified Mississippi. But it's still going. It's still going and changing. And
well, country
great
music,
part of it.
country has played a role in your music as well as blues. Who were those players that knocked you out?
When I first started playing guitar, Les Paul, Merle Travis, Chet Atkins were the main three guys and I guess Merle Travis at first, because he could do the thumb pick thing with he could keep the lead going with his first finger or the first two fingers, and still keep the bass or the chords going with his thumb, and that turned me on, because at first I didn't have a group. I was just playing by myself. And Merle Travis, what was the name of the album that he had? Had Black Diamond Blues on it and all that great stuff. It was just unbelievable. And I started out doing that kind of stuff. And I had my first guitar teacher was named Luther Nally, and I think he's playing now with the Sons of the Pioneers, Roy Rogers group. And I remember us sitting down, and he was, you know, working out the guitar part on Honky Tonk on the record to show me. And when I was just starting to play, he would sit down with these R&B records that he really didn't care anything about, but because he could tell that I had talent, he would learn these leads himself so he could show them to me, the ones that were beyond me. I mean, when I first started sitting down with my guitar, I didn't even know a chord I was saying. Teach me how to play, you know, the Honky Tonk or whatever. And like I say, he would go the trouble to do that. And Luther and I still are friends. When I go back to Beaumont, he still works from time to time at a music store there in Beaumont when he's not on the road with the Sons of the Pioneers, and I still feel like a musician first, and then the different categories come second. You know, well, what do you really love? You know, blues or country or rock and roll. Those things kind of come later, but it's mostly just being a musician, because in Beaumont, most of the great people, I mean, some of these guys were just unbelievable pickers that still had to be plumbers in the daytime or do whatever they did just to be able to play at night. So to me, having the privilege of being a professional musician, the privilege of not having to go to work on a day job, to where you could, I mean, people would actually work to play. They would work in the daytime so they could be free to play, sometimes for nothing or for drinks at night. And the idea of somebody getting to play for free, I mean, to play all you know, all day long without having to support yourself with a day job, was almost unheard of in Beaumont. And if you did it, that was the sign of really making it. And it still is to me. And I think people don't understand that. It really is a privilege to be able to do this. If you have that many people that want to hear what you do, you're very, very lucky, you know, to be in that position, at least from where I'm sitting.
Thanks very much.
Great.
I think we,
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
that's a nice way to end it right there.
Okay.